Welcome to the Whiskey Congress. Honest, open talk dedicated to speaking the truth to those who are open to hearing it. Black, white, right, left. Most importantly, honest, bold, and fueled by good whiskey. In Whiskey Veritas, we are Whiskey Congress. Join the evolution.
Welcome once again to Whiskey Congress. We once again have beverages to review. A new beer from Dave from Philly.
And he sent us a lot of beer.
He has a lot of beer. And so we got to tell a quick story.
Yeah.
Last week he sent us a beer. We tried it. Neither of us thought it was anything that resembles drinkable.
It was awful.
It was horrible.
Motor oil.
And so I called Dave from the airport before leaving town because I just published the episode. I'm like, we're going to tell him what he sent us sucks. I wanted to let him know that we were just being honest, whatever. I called him, said, hey, we tried that Scotch cask ale you sent us. You went, fucking horrible, wasn't it?
Ugh.
Like, you son of a bitch.
Ugh.
You sent us that garbage knowing, okay.
I'm so glad that he said that, though, because my thought process was like, well, I just can't. I'll just never like good beer because if they think that's good, then it's fucking awful. Screw it.
If I have to acquire this taste, I'll stick to Miller Lite.
Right. I'd rather lick a horse's asshole. Screw that.
So this time we have Middle Ages Syracuse Pale Ale. I like it. Smooth. Got a little bit of citrus in it.
So for me, it actually doesn't really have a ton of taste or flavor.
Okay.
Like nothing really stands out to me. It's not overly hoppy. It's not hoppy at all.
It's very mild, very smooth.
Right. I'm not pulling a lot of citrus. I mean, I can sense that it's there. But I would, if I had to choose between this and a Citradelic, which I have in my hand.
Okay.
I would take the Citradelic over that, to be honest with you.
I would too. This is a pale ale. It's a more mild, and I won't go beer nerd on you too hard and say there's a difference between a pale ale and an India pale ale, but there's a lot more hops and more alcohol in an India pale ale,
right? And
that's what Citradelic is. And Citradelic is very citrusy.
Right.
This is mildly, but I like it. I would definitely drink this and not complain.
I would. I mean, if I'm in a situation where I'm around a bunch of beer snobs and I don't feel like putting up with the shit of ordering a Miller Lite, then if this is available, then that's something I could probably go to, and feel confident in my choice. But then if someone calls me on it, then I may beat them with the bottle just because.
So yeah, because that's your answer for.
Yeah, it is, and it's allowed.
So anyway, thank you again, Dave. If anyone else wants to send us beers, reach out to us. You can email jim@whiskeycongress.com or steve@whiskeycongress.com. We'll make it happen. Woohoo! We got a new whiskey to try too.
We do. And so this whiskey is Stranahan's. It is out of Colorado. It's, made in that bourbon style. A unique thing about it, if you're watching this on the video, and if you're not watching it on video, then go to YouTube and you can check it out. But this long black cylinder is kind of a cap, but it also doubles as a shot glass. It's made out of like tin or aluminum or something like that. And it's pretty cool. Now, I had a bottle of this. I got my dad a bottle a few months back, probably actually like a year ago. And the cap was on so tight that we had to use a belt strap wrench to get it off. We had to create enough torque to get. I mean, it was crazy. Like my grip is crazy strong, and I could not get that thing off, and my mom is yelling at me like, "You're gonna break it! You're gonna break the glass!" My dad's like, "He's not gonna break the glass," and I'm like, "Dad, I don't know. I'm not comfortable with this because I got to a point where I had it, and I was almost trying to bend it. It was nuts.
All right, so a little inside baseball. You and I you just bought this bottle, but we went to the liquor store together. When you started taking the cap off, I thought, "What the fuck are you doing?"
I know.
And then I went, "Okay, I guess that's all right."
Well, and that's why,
Yeah.
right? Like that's why, because to make sure that we could get it off. And then if we couldn't, it's like, hey, do you got a belt strap at your house? Because if you don't, then we need to I'll put it back and I'll grab another one.
I was initially shocked. I thought, okay, he must know what he's doing, and then it's all you do. Anyway, the whiskey itself, very smooth, 47% alcohol, so pretty high by volume.
Girthy.
Yeah, it's not a super heavy whiskey. Actually, it's a pretty mild. It's, again, very for 94 proof. It's very smooth. I've been giving the score out a lot lately. I give it a 91. Because there's it doesn't have like a really wild flavor profile. There's really no smoke to it. But again, I'll happily drink it. It's got a really nice, I would call it a traditional bourbon flavor.
So to me, so it's a little, so it's got more of a distinct bourbon flavor to me, because there are like some hints of like cinnamon in there that throw it a little bit, throw a little bit of a curve, that pull it off of that typical bourbon American whiskey trail, and I like it. I like it right now. Now, for whatever reason, there are times of the year where I don't like it and it's an absolute turnoff. And I think part of it, like in the wintertime, I don't like it because regionally, like all the Christmas ale beers with the cinnamon and the nutmeg, you kind of feel like overwhelmed, like too much. And so drinking this to me in the winter, if it can either be good or bad, right? Like you can go with all of that and you love it. But if you feel inundated with too much Christmassy type beverages,
pumpkin latte spice,
and all that shit from the fall. Like to me, to me, I like this in the summer because it kind of offsets all that stuff that's going on in the fall and in the winter. So I give it a 92.
Okay,
a little bit higher than you. Again, the stronger the better for me. This has got a pretty solid punch to it.
Yeah, for again, it's so smooth for that ABV.
Yeah, I mean that's a 94 proof. That's a 94 proof at 47%. So I'll take, I mean, like that gives it an extra point for me just because, and I like the flavor. It is distinct, but I don't like that flavor all the time. So
gotcha. Okay. Well, that's the beverage review portion of the show. Hope you enjoyed that.
Whiskey
and
review.
Now we will be.
Do we need like music and intro and outro for the whiskey review?
Maybe we do.
Whiskey.
If we do need it, that's not what we need. But
no.
All right.
We'll have to outsource that, like we did the intro.
Probably, yes. All right. Want to pause now? So, fun beverage review.
Yum.
Now on to the topics of the day. Gosh, I would love not to talk about Trump this week, but we really can't avoid it. I mean, the refugee thing where basically refugees coming across the Mexican border, mostly from Nicaragua and El Salvador, are being detained at the border, put into containment prison. Not prison is the wrong word, but
so I mean, what's happening is you have people coming across, and if they're not coming through a port of entry and seeking asylum, then if they come through anywhere else, it's not a designated port of entry at the right time, and they're coming across the border. And they're immediately being arrested if captured by Homeland Security and ICE.
Right.
And then they're being detained. And if they're an adult, then they're being arrested. Right.
Right.
And so crossing the border illegally is a crime. There are people who are saying it's not. But if you cross the border and you're not coming through a port of entry and you're not coming through a port of entry and requesting asylum, then you're illegally crossing the border. The crime for that is jail time up to 6 months, which you usually don't get. But technically, if they arrest you, then it could take up to 6 months to deport you. So, I mean, kind of you get that automatically. Right. And then there's a fine, and the fine is, up to $5,000, right? It's a misdemeanor.
Okay.
It's the equivalent of a bad speeding ticket is really what it is. It's the equivalent of going
reckless driving or
70 in a 40. And so it is a crime. And they're using that, and that's an actual ordinance, a statute. I think it's 1345. I can't remember the specific numbers of it, but it is a crime, and I actually wrote about it on our site, whiskeycongress.com. I lay it all out there in detail if you want more information on it. Go there. I try to give the most objective view about it as I could, just to give some people some clarity on it. And actually, someone came up to me today in the gym and said, "Thank you for writing that. I had no idea what was going on, and it helped clear things up for me." And it was a police officer here in Cleveland. So that made me feel nice about myself and things.
Your journalistic credentials are getting applauded in public.
Yay. So, but that being said, and I want to explain this I want to explain what's going on so that people understand it, because it's complicated, and it's not the way that Donald Trump is making it seem, and it's not what the Democrats are saying, where it's screaming babies and everything else. So the ordinance and everything that I'm saying, like none of this is new, right? None of this is new. this particular ordinance itself has been in place, I believe, I want to say since 1996.
Okay.
Right? Where if you come across, then you get if you come across at a place other than the port of entry and you're not requesting asylum, right? So that's the key is port of entry requesting asylum.
Right.
If you're not doing that, then it's illegal crossing and there's the fine and the minimum jail time that's associated with it. If you do it more than once, then, the jail time goes up and, the fines get doubled, but we're still not talking about stuff that breaks your back. But if you're a poor immigrant, then yes, actually it is. So then you have the issue with the families and the babies. And what's happening is there was a consent decree back in 1987 that was signed. That consent decree was the Flores
consent decree.
Yes. And that was signed, and then it ended up being appealed. But all of that said that children, whether they're unaccompanied minors or they're minors that come across with their family members, they can't be detained beyond a certain period of time. And that certain period of time, it's a very narrow window, right?
Okay.
It's a couple of weeks, right? They can't be detained for more than this period of time. And once that period of time is expired, or before that, you need to get them with a parent, with a close family member, with an agency or a foster home, like as fast as you can, right? And they can't be in like a jail detainment center, right? They've got to be somewhere else, right? Like, so they've got to be away from the adults that are being criminally charged, and they need to be isolated so that to protect them for their own good, right? Like, so we can't put them with the adults because these are technically criminals because they're being charged with illegally crossing the border or other things, drug smuggling, human trafficking, whatever it might be. So they have to separate them. The children can't be detained. They can't be arrested, basically, and they can't be detained for extended periods of time. Everything must happen quickly to get them out of containment and into a healthier situation.
Right.
And that's the crux that the Trump administration was landing on. They're saying, okay, because of this consent decree, right,
Consent decree.
Right. Well, that's what I said.
Consent decree.
Oh,
right.
because of this, right? Because of this 1997 Flores decision, we can't hold these kids with their parents in lockup. So we have to put them somewhere else because so many people are coming across, and because they're deciding there's a zero tolerance policy for anyone who comes across the border illegally, not at a port of entry, requesting asylum specifically. Any one of those people coming across, whether they've got kids or not, they're being arrested.
Right.
And because of this consent decree, we cannot keep the kids with the parents because this is what it says. So we have to separate them for the good of the kids, according to the government. Right? We have to keep them out of jail. So we're taking them out of jail, and we have no place else to put them. So we're throwing up these refugee immigrant detainment centers, right? Which are the equivalent of fucking prisons, right? Or dog kennels or whatever you want to call it, right? I mean, and we're sending them on, and then as we can process them, we're sending them to wherever we can, New York,
back home, or
Texas,
or into the country,
Ohio, or whatever. Right. And that's kind of the crux of all this. And then Trump, and I'm sorry it's taking so long, but this is just what the issue is.
At least you're getting it out there and you're explaining it clearly.
Trump then flips around and says, okay, everyone hates the fact that we're separating the families. So I'm going to fix it. He signs an executive order saying no longer can we pull children away from their family, away from their mother and father. The families get to stay together in detention. Right?
Right.
In whatever you want to do, in the containment, in whatever. So they get to stay together, but they have to stay together basically in lockup.
Yep.
And the way the executive order was written, there's no timetable on it, right? It's indefinite, right? Like, and that's, I think, in my opinion, this is where my opinion comes in. It's by design. I think that this is what they were pushing for. I think because this closed the loopholes that they were talking about the last 2 weeks. This is the children being able to come through was one of the big loopholes. So they then closed it by saying, all right, fine, executive order, kids stay with the parents, and then everybody stays locked up, and then we get to ship them all back together.
Right. Oh, and when you say they stay locked up, literally there are judges whose job it is to adjudicate border crossings, or I don't know, I forget what they called that branch.
Yeah.
And
illegal border
Okay.
illegal border crossings. There's a special group of judges. There's a memo that went out that began this whole zero tolerance policy, and that memo went to the judges who are adjudicating these cases, saying you need to make yourself available. We are now instituting a zero tolerance policy. If you come across the border and you are caught, then you will be prosecuted for illegally crossing the border.
And so one of the holdups I've heard a couple of politicians going back and forth about is that there are not enough judges. I mean, our legal system is slow to begin with. I mean, we all know that, but in this case, there's an additional constraint because the number of cases has gone up and the number of judges I don't believe has. And, with the process going the way it is, so these families are going to end up in detention centers for obviously longer than desirable. This is an incredible example, though, of media spin on every side.
Oh, yeah.
You just clearly stated what's going on. If you listen to MSNBC or CNN or NBC, and I normally separate those two groups, but you'll hear nothing but interviews with politicians saying, I saw children, crying as they were ripped from their mother's arms, and maybe that's happening.
It is. It absolutely is.
And then the flip side from the Fox News, it's, toddlers with MS-13 tattoos on their foreheads are trying to cross the border.
Right.
It's like, all right, stop it, both of you. I mean, tell the truth here.
And the reality is, this has been a problem all of Trump's administration. This has been a problem with Obama's administration. This is a problem with Bush's administration. Yeah. It really came to light. It really started to come to light in the mid 1980s, right? That's when we really started. That's when we saw our first surge of Central American, Mexican people coming across the border for various reasons, right? I mean, some of these countries were literally war zones because of the drug cartels and the government and everything else.
And the two, Nicaragua and El Salvador, still are.
Right, exactly. And that's where we're seeing a lot of these people come from. They're just like, listen, if I stay in my home country, there's a good chance I'm going to get caught in the crossfire, or I'm just going to be killed just because, because I won't work for a drug cartel, and they will literally hang my body from a power line. So, people. That's why people are running.
What they're trying to escape from is horrific.
It's hell. It's hell on earth.
And fixing, so much of the world is on fire right now.
Right.
Central America, the Middle East,
Africa. I mean, Europe's got major issues, and a lot of Europe's issues are because of the issues in Africa and the Middle East.
We have parts of America. I mean, Flint, Michigan still doesn't have fresh water.
Right. Puerto Rico is still.
Puerto Rico's.
Obliterated.
I'm working with a guy from Puerto Rico right now, and he went back there and he said, there are places that are just now getting power restored. There are places that have nothing but blue tarps for roofs, which means one really bad storm and you're going to have no roof again. Right. And so anyway, sorry not to go all negative, but that's the world we're in right now.
Right. I mean, it is definitely, it's bleak. It's bleak in a lot of places. So this problem goes all the way back to 1986. We never really resolved it because a lot of those things in those countries has not been fixed. Like you said, they're still a mess. And so the problem doesn't go away. And it's never addressed by any president after Reagan, Bush or Clinton, or Bush, little Bush or Obama. And so it is something that needs to be resolved. We do need to figure out, okay, what are we going to do about what are we going to do with the number of people coming in? And there's a lot of disingenuous rhetoric coming from both sides, like you said.
Right.
This was a problem under the Obama administration, and Obama instituted a policy that said instead of zero tolerance, it was the exact opposite. It was catch and release. If you find them, get a hold of them, document them, and then let them go. Right?
Right.
Trump saying do the opposite. If you find them, then arrest them, send them back no matter what. Now, with Obama's policy, it was if you find them, let them go if they don't have any sort of priors. Right. If you can, as well as you could track them, if they're not a violent criminal, if they're not a drug dealer, if they're not in human trafficking or whatever, then if you check no on all of these, then let them in. If any one of those boxes is checked yes, then you have to send them back. And they sent a lot of people back. The Obama administration sent a shit ton of people back.
He got called the deporter in chief by Fox News back when they were trying to
pissed
make
at
it,
everything that he did.
right.
Yeah, I mean, so the reality is it's been a problem. It's been a problem for every president. The progressive and the left mainstream media dumping this all on Trump, saying it's his fault. That's disingenuous because it has been a longstanding problem. And the media solution is we'll just let everybody go. Go. You need to flip to Obama's policy, and Trump's obviously not going to do that. Because of the way he campaigned and because I think he honestly believes that's not the way to go. He's pushing the idea that, listen, we need to come together and figure out something in the middle. But for him, it's we need to find something in the middle, but we also need the wall.
Right. And this is one of these situations where I don't believe the wall would actually stop the problem. I mean, it would stop some people, I'm sure, but unless it's literally the Great Wall of China, you put a 10-foot wall up, I'll get a 12-foot ladder. Right. And I mean, put razor wire up and I'll cut it. I mean, it's
to a degree. I mean, I think the wall. I think you put the wall high enough, then it will stop people.
To the tune of how many $1 billion.
Right. I mean, but the reality is that you do have people coming in other ways. One, you've got tunnels. Two, you have people that are coming in
by boat
that are coming up along either coast.
Right.
It makes it harder. It kind of funnels it and allows us to kind of track it more. But so I think that there's some things that you can do, and Trump has said this in the past, and at least his administration has said, when we say wall, we mean an overall defense system across the border that includes a wall, that includes drones, that includes more border agents. And I think in reality, you son of a...
I spilled whiskey.
Little splash. It wasn't
that bad.
But I think in reality, they've got to... the way they should have sold this from the beginning is said we're going to increase border security in places where it's wide open, where it's relatively flat and people can just crip walk across the border. Then we need to go up and throw a wall there. But other places it doesn't make sense to throw up a wall. You know why? Because there's a fucking mountain there,
or a river,
right? Or a river, or a canyon. And if you can cross the Rio Grande River or whatever it is, then you deserve to be here. But so I think that from the beginning, they basically marketed this and branded this wrong by saying we're just going to throw a wall up.
Well, because that wall is a lot easier to chant at a rally where you're. Then build better security and do things right and make.
I get it, but
I know.
It's just that. But they
sadly, that's why where we are.
Because
right?
he backed himself into a corner, and now you listen to Breitbart, you got to build a wall. And then when you have people that come on and talk about the logistics of actually building the wall, people just kind of go to just build a wall. Forgetting the fact that some places we can't build a wall, and other places it would just make more sense fiscally. Right, you can get the same sort of security if you've got drones that are and they don't need to be armed drones. We're not talking about the same drones that they're using over in Afghanistan, right? We just need them to be able to identify in real time what's happening along the border,
and allow border agents to react to caravans and whatever,
that are close by that can handle that.
I'd rather just chant "build that wall" or "stop killing babies" or whatever the left is saying. I got into a conversation that I think I'd call it an argument with a coworker who actually said he wants to come on our show. So I said, listen to us, respond to us on email, and I'll talk it over with my co-host. So we'll see if he listens. But anyway, he was just stuck on liberals are saying these are like concentration camps. Okay, that's a dumb statement. They're not like concentration camps. Now, I will say this. Under Joe Arpaio in Arizona, they were, and it's okay to call them that because Joe Arpaio fucking bragged about it, and that son of a bitch is still
he was convicted. He was convicted.
Yeah. But in these cases, no, these are not Nazi concentration camps. Yes, that analogy gets used all the time. And this guy was absolutely right. That was a dumb analogy. But then when I said, okay, but it's not the right thing to do, then the argument was, well, Obama didn't do it any better. Okay, that is also not an argument. The argument is I did not really pay attention to this problem. That really isn't on my radar, wasn't on my radar until recently. And if it's only getting highlighted because CNN wants to make Trump look like an awful human being, whatever, it's a problem. We've identified it. And rather than trying to fix it, we're using it as yet another political football, and that's the problem.
And the difference with Obama, the difference between Obama and Trump is that with the Obama administration, they had the same problem, right? They didn't have the capacity to deal with the number of people that were coming across. But what they did was, one, they went to the catch and release. But when they had unaccompanied minors that came across, it wasn't, we're not going to just take this 16-year-old kid and just say, all right, good luck, figure it out. They would hold these kids, and then they would say, all right, we're going to figure out something to do with you, so
Get you with
at
a
least
relative or whatever.
have a chance. Right. Now, there were mistakes made. They didn't always get them to the right people. They there were sketchy people out there who, there was a case here in Ohio, I think it was in Marion, Ohio, where they made these people work, they made these kids work on an egg farm, and they were treating them like slaves. There were instances where the kids got assigned to people who entered these, young people into like sex trafficking and things like that, and in the sex trade. So it wasn't perfect. There were definitely mistakes made, and when you're talking about thousands and thousands of people, mistakes are going to happen.
In this case,
Absolutely.
young kids,
and it's awful. It's terrible, and you've got to be able to fix your processes so that shit doesn't happen. But I'm not going to sit there and say, well, that's directly Obama's fault. It's a massive bureaucratic structure where you're going to have mistakes. And so you learn from that, and you say you need to better vet the people that you're sending these kids to, and you need to follow up with them, and you need to make sure that there's some sort of a process of quality control to make sure that these kids aren't put in situations that could cause them harm. But that's a situation that everyone had, that each president had to have dealt with,
right,
and didn't necessarily deal with it appropriately, and so what they're doing with and part of what's going on with the Trump administration and what they're doing is they're looking at the culmination of the last 20 years, right? Like, and they're going to blame it all on Obama because that's their favorite go-to. Which is a whole nother show and episode.
Yeah.
And we can do a PhD course on what's going on with them and that. But the reality is, this is a culmination of issues and a confluence of problems, right? You've got a lot of different reasons why this is all a clusterfuck. So what they're actually doing, right? What they were doing at the border is they're following the law as it was written. They're following this consent decree. They put in the zero tolerance policy, which is the key where everyone is kind of hanging on. They're like, you don't have to do that. And they're absolutely right. You don't have to have a zero tolerance policy. There's something called prosecutorial discretion. The Supreme Court has talked about it. Every state recognizes it. Anytime you've been pulled over and you didn't get a ticket, right, when you should have, you're going 65 and a 50. Oh, officer, I'm sorry. I always thought this was 65. All right, Jim. Well, slow it down. Here's a warning. Have a nice day. That's prosecutorial discretion.
Right.
When the prosecutor decides he could give you the max of 10 years, but he ends up giving you 2.5 and 3 years probation or whatever. That's prosecutorial discretion. Or they decide not to charge you, or whatever it may be. Again, there's discretion in our legal system. And so what a lot of people on the left are calling for is saying, listen, we don't have to have this zero tolerance policy. It doesn't have to be like this. And that's the truest statement of all of it, right? Trump's following the law. This isn't, what they're saying is, listen, this isn't our policy. It isn't, right? They're following the law as it's written, but their policy of zero tolerance is different than Obama's policy of catch and release.
A fair analogy would be Obama's policy for states with legalized marijuana versus what Jeff Sessions would want. I mean, we're not there yet, and it's a whole different road.
We're not there, and we're not.
But I mean, Obama flat out came out and said, my attorney general will not be pursuing the federal action against these, activities in these states. So that kind of gave the green light for the Colorados and the states that followed to do what they did. And now a new administration's in town, and the
well, I mean, the only difference is that they really, Jeff Sessions would really love to crack down. Trump doesn't really give a shit, and he's like, Jeff, one, I don't like you, so I'm not going to give you anything.
I'm upset that I put you in the job I did.
And so you just focus on the shit that I care about, and because I don't care about weed. So it's actually not really a good analogy, but I get what you're saying. I totally get what you're saying. But the point of it is, by basically everyone in government, from Trump down to Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi to Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell,
to the sheriffs and mayors in these towns,
they're going to have to decide. They're going to have to come up with a legitimate policy on what we want, and we have to figure out in the country, what do we want,
right?
We're going to have to tighten up the border to clean up some of the really bad stuff that happens in terms of the criminals coming through and the gang members that come through and the drugs. But that's such a small percentage.
Exactly.
It's such a small percentage, but it's a reality.
True.
They do come over.
True.
Yes, MS-13 is everyone's focus, and MS-13 is less than 1% of anyone that comes across the border. But the damage they do is catastrophic.
Yeah, there's no doubt they're brutal, thuggish.
Right. I mean, but they're not the only
gang
gang that comes through, and they're not. And the cartels are just as bad. And it's a legitimate problem. And the drugs are a legitimate problem.
And to a large degree, the drugs are the source of this,
problem.
right? Because the drug war is going on in these countries, what creates the hellhole that make people run away from.
The problem.
And we're not going to solve this obviously in a half an hour, but take the money out with all these things. You take the money away from the people doing these things, take the money out of that process, and it goes away. Pablo Escobar. I don't know.
How do we take the money? Take the money out of what?
Take the money out of the drug war at home. Take the money away from. Stop making these drugs so valuable that when they come across the border that people will kill for them.
How the fuck are you going to do that?
Portugal, same thing Portugal does. Make the government control it.
It's a lot different in Portugal because like a lot of this shit like comes from Central and South America.
Right.
It's a lot harder. Yeah. It's a lot fucking harder to get it from Central and South America to Portugal than it is to the United States.
Yeah, I mean,
you know what I mean. Like,
I don't have the answer to that question.
Like trying to get a submarine made by me, you, and Jack down the street from Ecuador.
Jack's talented.
Jack is talented, but trying to get it from Colombia to the fucking United States is not easy. But it's a hell of a lot easier than to get it to fucking Portugal.
Yeah, but Portugal's probably getting drugs from across Asia. I mean, whatever. I'm not solving. I don't have the answer to that.
But you know why it's harder though? Because the immigration laws and the border security in all those places in Europe is a hell of a lot tighter than it is here.
Oh, you think so? I would disagree. Look at all the people flooding into Germany and England and whatever. I mean, people just they're dealing with this problem.
But they're coming. I mean, they're coming through. I mean, they're coming through as refugees and seeking asylum, and they're all. Right. I mean, they're coming on giant boats. Right to the ports, and Italy just turned somebody away.
Yeah,
just 2 weeks ago. Like, I mean, there were 600 people on a boat, and Italy was like, "Fuck you, go to Spain." It was Spain and some other country, I think Morocco or something like that.
Okay.
But like, go to Morocco, go to Spain. You're not coming here. And they didn't let them in.
Yeah.
Maybe they ended up in Germany.
Either way, the immigrants are fleeing all these hellholes we're talking about, and they're not natural hellholes. I mean, if Costa Rica, if Nicaragua and El Salvador weren't war-strewn drug camps, they'd be beautiful. They're right there on the Pacific and Gulf of Mexico. I've never been to Costa Rica, but I've friends who just got from there, and I saw videos or whatever. It's gorgeous there. Now, that's not the same place, but it's close. It's
Central America, South America. There's very beautiful, amazing things. I mean, between the Amazon, the jungle, the beaches.
Beaches are amazing. Right. The sport fishing is probably incredible. But okay, all right.
I would not be focused on the sports fishing.
I would, because there's some great stuff down there. But anyway, there's that. All right, so I kind of derailed that, and I apologize. But a lot of this is just purely in our country, just purely a political football. It's working for both sides. It's keeping us yelling at each other. It's the left is calling Trump a Nazi, which. Again, quit crying about that, people. It's stupid. No one who's reasonable believes he's Hitler. I'm not a fan. If you haven't picked up on that by now when you listen to the show, that's on you. But that's a dumb analogy. On the other hand, the whole protect us from the evil brown people coming across the border shit does a great job. It fires up their base.
The way he went on a tweet storm today. It's Friday. The way he went on a tweet storm today, and he basically said, listen, we have to stop them from coming to our country, because if we don't, then they're going to ruin our country, and they're going to make us a bunch of criminals, and they're going to infest us with all their terribleness and crime and disease and blah, blah, blah. Yada.
I mean, that's how his campaign started, right? They're sending their drug dealers, their rapists, whatever. I mean, that's what got him fired by The Apprentice and made him actually take the fucking campaign seriously. And,
so speaking of Nazis.
Yeah, speaking of Nazis.
We have, so last year, about a month from now, will be the 1 year kind of memorial of the Charlottesville protest, riots, rally, the Unite the White. It was Unite the Right rally. There were, a ton of white supremacists that all, went to Charlottesville. Heather Heyer, who was an anti-racist protester, she ended up being killed. She was run over by a man who decided to drive his Dodge Charger into a group of protesters that were protesting the white supremacists.
Right.
He ended up killing her. There were a number of fights. There were a number of people. Most of the people who were beaten in the situation were black. The weird thing that came out, there was one story that really came out of there that was really bizarre. A black kid was jumped by a group of white supremacists. They got the jump on him, and they did some pretty severe damage to him. But he punished a lot of those guys. Those guys, he fucked them up. They gave it and he gave it back.
I vaguely remember that.
And they ended up the Charlottesville police ended up charging him initially, and then they charged. So then they ended up Sean King, who is of Twitter fame. He used to be with the Daily News and a few other places. He led this charge on social media to find the guys who beat this kid up, and they ended up finding all of them, right, through video footage and all this other stuff. It was an amazing job that they were able to track these guys down, and they found them. And you watch the video over and over again. It's just the kid maybe yelled something at him, but then they ran after him, they charged him, and they beat him in a parking garage. And to say that he instigated it because he yelled something at them, and then they charged him and then beat the shit out of him with blunt objects, kicking him and everything else, it just didn't make any sense. Now, the local prosecutor ended up dropping the charges against the proper victim being the black guy, not because he was black, because he was beaten by four other guys. But that was one of the bizarre things that had come out of that whole thing. All that being said, the organizer of Charlottesville has organized another rally, and this time in Washington, D.C. And his permit has been approved, and it's set to go off sometime in August.
Yeah, I think there's more red tape for them to get through, but it's being held in Lee Park, which is no longer called Lee Park because it was named after Robert E. Lee. Yep. Which why you would name a park in a city that a guy wanted to capture after him? Okay, don't know, but. Anyway,
I know.
So okay, or we do know. So I got to tell you this, and this is going to probably piss you off, but I have to do it. I went to Lowe's today, and I walked past tiki torches, and that reminded me of Charlottesville because those idiots are walking down the street carrying.
Why are they pissing me off?
Just because I'm totally derailing. But I was.
Unless you wanted to grab one and go to this thing, that would piss me off.
That's what I was going to say. Would you mind if I took it? No. I looked at those things. I thought, how could you walk into a Lowe's, grab one of those things, and think, I'm going to walk down the street and prove what a badass man I am with a tiki torch? I think their permit should say, if you're going to carry torches, you have to carry the kind that drips out on your hand, burns the shit out of you, or goes out every 5 minutes. Do it right or don't do it. I saw these.
You have to get a hunk of wood and a piece of a T-shirt,
right,
and kerosene,
and Rambo
real
it.
deal.
Rambo
right.
it, yes. Obscure movie reference. You haven't seen them, but anyway, I'm sure you have, but some people haven't.
They drew first blood.
They did. That's actually the first one's a great movie.
It was.
They went down from there, but I honestly thought about that. Like, I'm looking at these tiki torches, going, "Fuck, some idiot's going to be raiding the greater Washington D.C. area Lowe's, buying these stupid fucking things to show." Anyway,
it's that part was very ridiculous. I mean, it's just like, so.
Do you know how stupid you look right now?
So you're supposed to be intimidating?
And you're carrying a party favor.
Right. Like, so you think, like, I mean, you may be, you're probably intimidating maybe the Jews, right? Because the Jews the American Jews aren't known for fighting, right? Now, you go over to Israel, it's a different story.
Very different, yes.
But you think, have you been to Chicago? Like, have you been to the east side of Cleveland? Like, have you been anywhere where there's more than one black guy? Like, do you really think that you walking the streets with tiki torches is intimidating?
I don't think there's anyone who's intimidated by a tiki torch.
Right. Well, exactly. But I mean, like, thinking about who their target audience is of people that they want to intimidate. Like,
you do that, I'm thinking, make me a daiquiri, not ooh. Scary guy with fire about to. I mean,
right? Like, hey, why don't you stick that in the ground and pull out the bean bag so we can play, a little cornhole and let's have a nice time.
Right.
Why are you guys being assholes?
And is there citronella in that? Because the mosquitoes are bad this time of year.
Right. Speaking of which, I got chewed. I was watering my grass the other night because I was filling in some dry spots, but I got chewed up by mosquitoes. Like, it looks like I got bit by vampires. Like,
Sorry, that's not funny, but
I had to take a Benadryl because they were so itchy at night, which I took the 2 Benadryl and then I was
and that's the end of the conversation. Yeah,
right. I just got weird dreams, all that shit. But anyway, so that's going on. So we'll keep an eye on it.
Right.
Hopefully, I mean, honestly, it's a shame that they're going to do it. Free speech, fine, whatever.
Yeah.
But hopefully it doesn't have just the. I mean. It was so bad. I mean, just
Charlottesville was terrible. Yeah,
the girl dying, the things that broke out, the fights. This is
going to be very different in a lot of ways, though, because Charlottesville is a small town and a college town,
and they weren't prepared.
This is D.C. This is in relative proximity to the White House, relative close proximity to the White House, and I mean, the park is really close in D.C. And just the thought that they're going to try to push this button again, and again, you said it when we started, they're calling it a white civil rights march.
Yep.
Yeah, that is the fact that strikes a chord with enough people for this to take shape is really scary. Well, not scary to me. I'm used to it by now. I'm sorry to say, but it's so silly for white people to think that their rights are being trampled upon, and yet that anger has been so well stoked and so well.
I mean, just a simple idea. I mean, anyone like, oh, well, a black guy got a job and I didn't. And
right.
The reason why is because he was black, and that's racist and it's violating my civil rights. Like, well, I mean, they hired a guy. If you guys were equal, it didn't matter. So what you're saying is, if you're equal and you walk into a job, you should get the job because you're white, and if you don't, then it's racist, right? Like, black people aren't saying we should get jobs because we're black. What we're saying is, if we walk into a place and all things are the same, then you got to come up with a different determining factor than just that person looks like me, so we're going to take them, right? And if you don't want to do that, then what's happening is there are some black people who are saying, all right, fine, I'm going to start a business, I'm going to start a company, and I'm going to bring in as many people who look like me, since apparently we're allowed to do it, and I'll start my own business. Now, most people aren't applying for those jobs, so it's not that big of a deal for white people yet.
Right.
But I mean, there are some instances where black people are being hired, white people aren't, and white people are assuming it's a quota. But if you're going in thinking that, well, there was a black guy in the lobby, so I'm definitely going to get the job over him, chances are you're probably not interviewing well.
Fair.
And that's costing you. Right, or if you just assume that you're getting a job and you walk in and you're overly arrogant or whatever, a lot of black people, when they walk into job interviews, I do this every time. Like, I cross my T's, I dot my I's, I know everything about the company. I go above and beyond to learn as much as I can about the people that I'm about to interview with. I make sure that I bring everything that you would need into an interview, including my strong points, my weak points. I have stories to tell about both where I was strong, where I was weak. I don't hide whatever my weaknesses are, but I make sure that I surround them with things that I'm very strong at, and I try to explain. And I try to provide examples of my strengths during the interview. So, you go through all these sort of things and you don't assume anything. You don't assume that you're going to get the job. You fight for that job as if you've never had a job before. You'll never have another opportunity again. You don't have a dollar to rely on, and you put your best foot forward. And there are a lot of people, because I've interviewed people before, that is not how they interview. And it's usually, it's usually the younger white kid comes in, his tie is barely on, he's kind of shaven, he's got way too much cologne on, he smiles too much, his body language is shitty, he doesn't have good examples of why I should even fucking hire him. It's kind of like, hey, I'm here, so what's up? And that, like, I see it a lot, or the girl who walks in and she's like, well, I'm smart, I got a 4.0 and I'm hot, so hire me. And I've dealt a lot with that in the past, and it's not because I'm black and I'm saying, well, I'm not going to hire you because you're white. There are white people who just like that is a turnoff in terms of the hiring process. And so if you have someone that's coming in that's pulling out all the stops because they feel they have to, because they may not get another chance, they may not get another opportunity. In some instances, people actually respect that and they get hired. And if you're walking out, if you don't get a job and your first assumption is they gave it to the black guy because he was black because of affirmative action and I'm being discriminated against, then I'm willing to bet that you were a shitty interview to begin with.
I agree with that, but I would approach it from a different angle and say that,
of course you would, because you're white.
Because I am white, and but I think in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, flat out discrimination up until a certain point, flat out discrimination was just accepted, and then that started to turn, and it started to say, okay, we're affirmative action and quotas got put in because, in spite of equal qualifications or better qualifications, things weren't getting better. So those policies got put in place, and I think in today's world, those barriers are way less for black people applying for jobs and trying to advance in the world. And this white guy who isn't living like Donald Trump feels like, damn it, I deserve that. And I'm being just, everyone feels like a victim, and they feel like the reason that they're not shitting on a gold toilet, which I wish was an analogy and not a reality for Donald Trump. Those people feel like they're being put down. It's like, no, you're not. You're actually living just fine. The fact that other people are not being discriminated against around you, improving your lot on life, is a good thing. So quit whining, do your thing, make your best life. But the people who are upset the discrimination no longer exists, especially the people who don't admit that the discrimination exists or existed, are infuriating to me.
Right.
Because I'm white.
And I think a big part of it in general is the other part of it, aside, you set the race factor aside, there's a huge just gap in wealth and the money that people have. And we are constantly flooded with images of rich people doing rich people shit.
Right.
And, I want a Lamborghini. I want a Range Rover. I want a yacht that can go from that can somehow get from Cleveland to South America. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you start looking at, I want a private jet, and right. you start looking at the people who have it, right? Like, because you and I have had this conversation, and I'm glad that I was able to enlighten you in some way, shape, or form. But, I tell you all the time that, listen, some of these politicians, some of these people in positions of power are really not that smart.
Yeah.
Right. They may be book smart, but their common sense is fucking zero. Or
sometimes they're not even book smart.
Some of them are maybe not even book smart. They just have kind of been pushed up the ladder for various reasons, because they have a certain look, or because of family ties, or because of whatever reason.
Family wealth,
right?
I'm right.
Family wealth, all that sort of shit, right? So you see these people in these positions of power, and you're like, he's not smarter than me. He's not better looking than me. She's not whatever. And then you get pissed, right? People just literally start to get pissed. And again, people with money, they flaunt their shit. And now we've got social media, we've got Twitter, we got Instagram, we got Facebook, and it's never not around us. Like, you constantly are seeing rich people doing rich people shit, and it reminds you that you're not, and you get pissed, right? Now, a lot of it is decisions that you've made, choices that you've made, and maybe there were opportunities that you missed out on and things like that. But that's one of the biggest issues, right? Is you see it And a lot of people say, oh, I would do this for free, and I don't want that. I just,
Right.
a lot of your people who have issues with professional athletes, right? It's just a lot of it is mostly just jealousy. At the end of the day, like a lot of people would love to be able to get paid to play a sport. Right?
Should you?
They would love to hit the lottery of being a number one draft pick in the NBA draft, and then when they're not, and they realize because they're too short and they're too fat and they're too slow, right? They get pissed and they start making excuses like, well, I mean, one, I would play for free, and two, those guys are overpaid, and that money should go to education.
Right.
Like, I mean, that's all. That's it every time.
But yet, if you say let's take the money for the border wall and put it towards education, it's like no,
no, not that.
All right. So you sent me a text today, and I didn't know about the story until you sent it to me. There was a kid named Antwan Rose in Pittsburgh, in East Pittsburgh, who was shot and killed. So, setting the full story and trying to keep all the facts out there, police are responding. They're following a vehicle that they believe had been involved in a drive-by shooting. Car gets stopped. I believe the driver of the car had been taken out of the car. A passenger in the car jumps out of the car and runs away. Basically, this kid jumps out of the car. He's a high school sophomore or junior. I think he's a high school junior, and gets shot in the back. Gets shot in the back while running away, unarmed, and dies in the hospital, or was pronounced dead at the hospital. So anyway, I read the story after you sent me the text. I watched the video, and the time that elapses between him jumping out of the car, starting running, and shots fired is less than a second. Now, like I said, it's a fucked up situation. There was a drive-by shooting. The car that he was in was very likely involved in that shooting. I guess the car had a bullet hole in it or something like that. So whoever was shot fired back. There's lots of shit to unfurl in that regard. But what is plain and simple is a cop shot a kid in the back who was not a threat, who was running away.
Well, and this is what...
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. What's your last one?
And the officer involved had only been with that police force for like 3 weeks and only been sworn in that day.
Right. Like, I mean, that was his first time on the street. Not that matters, but it matters.
Well, what also matters is it wasn't his first time on the street as a cop because he had been with 3 or 4 other police organizations.
And been fired from all of them.
Okay.
For various reasons. We don't know what they are.
Yeah, and it's probably for administrative reasons we never will. But the fact is, first day on the street and someone's dead, an unarmed kid is dead. Regardless of prosecutorial whatever, the fact that this guy ends up on a police force with a gun and in a spot.
There's almost, you almost think, listen, when it comes to policing, every state should have a rule that you get fired from like 2 police departments, you can't be a cop anymore.
Or I mean, it should depend on. I was about to say it should depend on why. Maybe it shouldn't.
I mean, no, because
it could be.
Well, no,
if you fuck the captain's wife
right,
twice.
If you're banging somebody, like if it's because you're sleeping with you're sleeping with, like you said, the captain's wife, your boss's wife, or something weird like that, then I think it can't be.
There could be administrative
right.
versus
right.
civil.
I mean, it doesn't need to be. You never want to have absolutes.
Right.
Only a Sith Lord thinks in absolutes. But maybe there should just be something like, listen, you wash out from 2 police departments because of administrative whatever, then that's it. Like, that's the limit. State rule. It's just better for the public if you're no longer a cop. If you can't do it at 2 places, then you can't. You don't get a third strike. Period.
Or you don't get to carry a gun. You get to stand at a street corner and wave traffic through.
I know that's not a thing.
I'm with you.
You just don't get to be a cop. Sorry.
This shooting. So no body cam on the cops.
Nope.
So we're not for.
But we don't know why that is. We don't know. Did they have body cams? And we don't know if they just weren't turned on. I don't know.
The only reason we know what happened, the only reason we saw that is because a bystander saw a bunch of police lights going and started filming with their phone out the window of an apartment. And again, the shocking thing in this case is he's out of the car and shot. I mean, it was so fast. And I really feel like beating up the media all around today, and as you know, I like beating up the right-wing media more than the left, although they both deserve it a lot of the time. But let me read you the headlines. So while we were, you were doing your thing earlier, I was looking up the story, and I Googled the name Antwan Rose, and NBC News headline: Protests erupt following fatal police shooting of 17-year-old Antwan Rose. Okay. I think that's pretty journalistically factual and unbiased. Fox News: teen, 17, shot dead by cop while fleeing traffic stop, had an empty handgun clip in his pocket. So
not material to it.
Not material. I mean, okay. I mean, no, it is completely irrelevant. No one knows what was in his pocket when they shot him in the fucking back.
Right.
That headline is designed to say, "Hey, white folks, this kid deserved it." That's what that headline is supposed to put your head into.
Yeah, and that's so the big issue with this case, and I am willing to bet this cop, like, I think he will probably be fired. But I don't think he'll be charged, and the reason why is they will push the fact that the car was most likely involved in this drive-by shooting. Now, what will help them is once they come back and they go through and they look at the ballistics, chances are something is going to match the drive-by that happened that started all this.
Right.
And they're going to try to use that. Now, I would push to have it thrown out as immaterial to the specific action that happened, because at no point in time did he actually pose a threat. The officers are pulling the car over suspicion of a crime. You don't know that he's actually committed that crime, right? And typically the rule is that you can use deadly force if you know that someone has committed a violent act or whatever act against another person, against a person or something along those lines. So my opinion is you should be able to prosecute him, right? I mean, I don't think this is that much different than the issue with Walter Scott down in South Carolina, but I guarantee you his lawyers are going to say, listen, this car was the reason they were pulling this car over is because it matched the description of something that happened. Listen, you can shake your head, but the argument is
they're going to say that. They're going to
say this car was involved.
I'm not shaking my head that's saying you're wrong. I'm shaking my head that that's
this car was involved in a drive-by shooting. We had a shooter who shot at the car and said that he hit it. This car matches the description of what they said, and when we saw the car, it had the ballistic issues that match what that the witness / victim said. So we pulled it over. So knowing that this car was involved in this sort of action, as soon as they get out of the car, right, and they don't obey the commands, then the thought process is these are the people responsible for X crime. So we're allowed to use deadly force to stop them. Now, that's the argument that's going to be made. And what's going to happen is, in terms of an indictment, is a grand jury going to say, that's not enough, you should have waited, you need to go to trial? Or is the grand jury going to say, no, that's plenty, the car was in a drive-by? And
I think there will be a trial. I'm not saying the guy will get convicted.
I don't think there will be a trial.
This is not something I'm willing to bet on because it would be too twisted a thing to bet on. I think there will be because there's enough of a spotlight on it. But that might not matter. Grand jury isn't going to be public.
The grand jury is not going to be public. It's probably not going to be for a few months, and a few months. Maybe longer than that.
By then, the news cycle will have flipped so many times.
Right. I do not believe that this will go to trial.
Okay. I hope you're wrong. But if this cop ever gets a job where he's allowed to touch a gun again,
no, he should. To be fair, to be clear, I think he should be fired.
Oh, absolutely. Gone. He's currently on unpaid leave.
Right. I also feel that he should be charged.
I agree.
And I also feel that he's guilty of murder.
I agree. Nas called for him to get the electric chair. I don't know if you saw that or not.
Yeah, I did. But, you shoot a man. What about the fucking Wild Wild West, right? A gunfight was pull your gun out. You step
fight,
off,
right?
You step off 50 paces, you turn around, and you draw your guns, and you both shoot at each other, right? This whole idea
if you shot a guy in the back in the Old West, you got hung the next day.
Right, you don't shoot somebody in the back. That's just a bitch move, right? Like, in terms
There's
of just
more
like,
to it than that.
right?
Yes,
Like, I mean,
definitely
like
a
you
bitch
just don't shoot someone in the back because they're not posing a threat to you. I'm sorry,
running,
they're not.
when someone is running
Now,
away from you, they are
if he turns at any point in time,
and has something in his hand.
Then it's still fucked up.
then-
But I mean, if he turns and has a cell phone in his hand, it's awful. But at least I could say, all right, it's happening in real time. Turns, you don't have time to fucking react. That's when it gets really blurry. But when he's on a dead sprint running from you, then you fucking run after him.
Or don't.
But
you don't shoot him in the fucking back.
But you don't shoot him in the back. Right, you just don't shoot him in the back, and I can't believe that there's any police department that says if someone gets out and runs away from you, shoot their ass in the back.
And the video of this is so crucial. When I read the story, I'm obviously forming an opinion, and they included the cell phone video, and I was like, holy shit, this guy did not. I mean, it was door open, guys running, bam, bam, bam. Bam, actually, 3 times. But I mean,
right.
I agree with you. I agree. This guy is a murderer. Period.
I think
just like Walter Scott. Obviously, there's difference in the cases.
But in terms of legality, how this all plays out, I don't.
I mean,
I don't.
We've seen way too many cops get walk either on mistrials or flat out acquittals. I'm always going to point back, and I always forget the names of the guys, and I feel bad about this. But the Arizona hotel room where they shot a guy who was on all fours because he reached back for his shorts that were falling down. Again, I forget the names and I apologize. But this, we'll keep an eye on this. I hope this guy is charged and convicted. This is, again, to me, this is a black and white. Nope, sorry for the bad pun. Case of murder. He did not have any reason to pull the trigger, and he did. All right. We are running low on time. I want to quickly talk about the World Cup.
Okay.
One of the biggest sporting events in the world. And I'm paying a little bit of attention. Actually, while I was talking to Dave from Philly about the shitty beer he sent us, I was watching Germany and Mexico on the TV at the bar at the airport. And it was funny because Mexico was winning 1-0 with about 10 minutes to go. Very exciting finish, and Dave's TV feed was about 3 seconds ahead of mine, which sucked because he would be reacting to shit that I hadn't seen yet. That I have to go, oh, that makes sense. But anyway, Mexico ends up defeating Germany, and I don't like the German national team for a variety of reasons, mostly their history against U.S. soccer, but whenever you say German national, it also gives me kind of a queasy feeling. But Mexico ends up beating them, and Landon Donovan came out and said that he was cheering for Mexico and that U.S. fans should be as well. I certainly was cheering for Mexico. He got a lot of shit for that, and I'm curious. I mean, you did not see the game, correct?
I did not.
Have you watched any of it?
No.
Because America's not in it, so
Absolutely.
Okay.
I mean,
that makes sense. My passion for it is way down because the U.S. isn't in it. I mean, I watch a game, but I don't really care.
I'm not a soccer fan to begin with.
Right.
But I do love the idea of, I like the world coming together to cheer for their respective teams. But I'm an American. I'm sorry. I know that pisses off like the black nationalists that are like, just give us separation, which I'm like, so you want segregation? No, I want separation. Okay, well,
here's a dictionary. Here's a thesaurus.
Right, here's a thesaurus. Go to the synonym section. But I'm an American. That's all I know. I can't and maybe I need to take the time to do a blood test to figure out specifically where my bloodline traces to, whether it's Jamaica or Ghana or Nigeria or wherever, and get that figured out. But all I got is America. That's all I know. It's the only place that I've lived for any extended period of time, and it's afforded me a pretty solid life that I can't complain about for the most part. So that's when it comes to the Olympics and when it comes to shit like this, that's what I root for. Like I'm not gonna just all of a sudden grow some false allegiance just because it's the it thing to do. And that, like, I saw that a lot when I was in college. Like people, just rooting, black people rooting just for an African team just because. It's like, well, do you have any connections to said country? No. It's like, okay, well, then your rooting is all for naught. And if it's like, I get the fun factor. Like, it's just fun to have a dog in the fight.
Right.
And if I want to do that, then I'll just start betting. Like, I'll literally.
It's amazing what a few bucks on a game can do.
Well,
isn't it?
yeah, exactly. Like, if I really want to get into something, like if I know I'm going to be around a group of people on a Saturday or a Sunday during a major golf tournament like the Masters or whatever, and they're going to force me to watch it, then I'll call a bookie and I'll put the money in. And pretty soon I won't have to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll actually be able to do it legally. And
in theory, you won't have to break the law that you just admitted to. Okay.
Right. But I'll just put fucking money on it, and then I will get into it. Like, so if for some reason during, over the next few weeks while this is going on, if I get sucked into a situation where somebody's like, hey, we're all going to watch the World Cup, and I have to be there for whatever my allegiances are, then I will just figure out a way to bet on it. And then that'll be the way I draw in. But I'm not gonna form some love for some team that I know dick shit about, and I'm not gonna get dick shit out of it.
I'm having a flashback to one of the days you and I were watching a football game together, and you had a receiver going against the Bills.
In fantasy?
Yeah. And so, this catch gets made, you were like, yes! And I look at you like, fuck you. And you're like, oh, come on. It didn't really affect your team that much. That was, I think we had that's probably the league I do with you where we were playing, $5 a game, $2 a game, whatever.
Yeah, the FanDuel.
Yeah. So
listen.
Exactly. It works.
I mean, it works. Money's a crazy motivator. So that's how I get into it.
I just have a flashback to that. It was so funny. All right. So
do you want to, by the way, do we want to get in on this? Do we
on the World Cup?
I don't know, start betting a little bit. Not that I've got a problem or an itch.
No, really, not at all. Well, that's holy shit.
Let's do it.
All right. Let's
put our mortgages up.
Yeah, right. No, and no. Holy shit! Never seen this side before. You guys start playing poker. We guys start going play poker downtown.
Okay.
Not against each other, but in the casino.
In general,
and then we got
it's hard for me.
Rounders was on earlier today also, and I love that movie so fucking much.
Poker is hard for me in Vegas. I know it should. I really do enjoy playing poker, and I love playing cards. It's just hard for me in Vegas because there's free booze and there's so much everything else going on that I can't.
Downtown Cleveland. There's a poker.
I know, but I'm just saying, like when we were in Vegas together, you're just like, hey, I'm gonna go play poker.
And
I'm like, nah, man, I can't.
Yeah.
I'll lose a ton of money because it's too many distractions.
Today I watched a lot of TV today, and The Hangover was on too, and that reminded me I need to go to Vegas again soon. I will say we need to go. I'm fine with we, but I know that this guy needs to get back to Vegas.
You and me both.
All right.
September, fall, do a little sports betting, college.
That sounds good. We might not need to go there for sports betting by then, but I'll still do it. Plus, you got your cigar shop out there that you love. Well, where they recognize you.
That's true, they do. Which is
it's kind of
one
crazy.
That's great customer service on their part, and two that just
it's kind of fucked up. You go there twice a year, and
right.
this dude's like,
I mean,
Steve, you want the Dominican whatever? Like, okay,
man,
wow,
I go,
that was neat.
and as soon as I go in there, Jose. He either gets me exactly what I want, like because I always go in there for a specific cigar, and he usually gives it to me, or he says, "Listen, I know you want XYZ, but I've got this one that is like that one but better. You need to smoke it," and I trust him because he's never steered me wrong. And then the bartenders, they've had the same bartenders there every single time, which is crazy to me. The consistency. And he sees me and he's just like, "Yo, Cleveland."
That was eye opening when I went there with you. You and I each have our bars in the Cleveland area where we are known, and that's cool. You went to fucking Vegas and that happened,
which I really commend.
Which is also kind of awesome. Yeah.
I just think it's more there. Like that's just the level of professionalism on their end. And maybe
you're a recognizable guy, but yeah, and your consistency in going there and drinking and smoking cigars. All right, time for Come At Me, Bro.
All right, this is my Come At Me, Bro for you. Do you mind if I lead off?
I do not mind.
I do not mind. Want to come strong?
Actually, it's probably better that way.
All right, so this is a little bit weird, but I think and this is off the rails. But
all right.
I think that no matter what happens at the beginning of the NFL football season, whoever starts at quarterback for the Bills, you're going to be a pissy shit about it. Whether it's
a pissy shit,
whether it's Josh Allen or
AJ McCarron.
AJ
or Nathan
McCarron. It's not going to be
Peterman.
Nathan Peterman. Stop.
And that he's supposedly looked best in camp.
You're going to be pissed about it, and you know it. You're trying right now. You're trying to be reasonable, Jim.
No, here's the thing. I'm going to go through a cycle. All right, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to watch the preseason. You fucker. I'm now glad what I'm about to hit you with.
It doesn't
all right, go ahead. Keep going.
Because you're going to be pissed because you didn't want Josh Allen at quarterback.
Correct. I didn't want us to trade up to get.
You didn't
Josh
want to
Allen.
trade up. You did, and
he would not have been my choice,
right,
in the draft period. But certainly, I didn't want to give up 3 fucking assets to get one. Go ahead.
There we go.
Yep.
And then you didn't want AJ McCarron.
I don't have a strong opinion on that. I'm not thrilled about it, but I don't think, oh God, get this guy out of here. I didn't like him in college. I hate Alabama, but if he ends up being that guy that can climb up and make things happen, great.
And part of the problem is no matter what, like you guys didn't upgrade your receiving core enough to the point where
you got Rod Streeter.
To the point where you have a receiver that can make any of these guys look good. So as soon as one of these guys fucks up, which is probably going to be early in that first game, and I don't know who's your opener.
I want to say Baltimore, but I could be wrong.
Okay, well, whoever is the starter, chances are they're gonna throw an interception or a bad pass, and early in the game. And the meltdown will ensue. No matter who it is.
No. The only one that will cause me to melt down is Josh Allen.
That's not true.
That is true.
That is not true. If
true.
it's Peterman or Peterson, what is
Peterman.
it? Peterman.
Yeah.
If it's Peterman, Mister, I threw 5 interceptions in one game.
One half.
Right. And oh my God, he was so terrible. If it's him, you're going to be like, this is the guy that threw 5 interceptions in one game, and now he's a starter.
No, I won't, because I actually think he's getting he's Shane Falco. He is Shane Falco.
From the replacements?
Yes. He had one horrible game. He had a horrible game. Yes, remember Shane Falco was like, "You're the guy who threw those 3 interceptions." It was like, was anybody not watching TV that day? Nathan Peterman got put in a very bad spot, got the shit kicked out of him, had the worst half of quarterbacking in football history statistically, and
true story.
And Nathan Peterman to me would be an underdog comeback story if he does well. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
We'll note this conversation.
It's on record.
And then as soon as
whenever people tell me like how I think about something politically or sports, or whatever, I'm like, I've talked about this on my show. You can listen and hear what I said. So don't tell me I said this or feel this way because I recorded it. So this is on record.
This is on record.
I'm aware.
And game 1, oh God, now I'm rooting for Peterman to start.
All right.
Because as soon as he does, I cannot wait for the fucking meltdown.
All right. Well, on that note, we decided we were going to talk about comics sometime soon, do a sort of a sideshow talking about comedians and comedy. Mm-hmm. I have said many times that the only issue that a joke should be judged on is it funny or is it not? I give comics a pass. When Samantha Bee said her thing about Ivanka Trump, my feeling is it's comedy. I think you disagree with my carte blanche for comics. If it's funny, it's good. If it's not funny, it's not. Go.
Actually, I don't. Actually, that's my bar. If it's funny, you're funny. If it's not, you're not. Right? And I absolutely, so maybe you're right, because what Samantha Bee did, I absolutely hold that against her. Samantha Bee would never have called Michelle Obama a cunt. Never.
True.
Right? And she never would have called Melania Trump a cunt. Or no, I'm sorry.
Ivanka?
No. Obama's daughter.
Malia.
Right? She never would have called Malia Obama.
Okay, no, that would have been right. Age-wise, that's fair. It's a daughter.
Fine, and that's why I went with
Michelle.
That's why I went with Michelle first. But they never would have had that level of disrespect for Michelle Obama or Obama's kids, which I fully agree with. No one should have. But to this extent, now, if you want to say, oh, well, Ivanka Trump, she's in the administration, she's fair game.
Yeah.
Well,
fair,
you know
I
what?
won't say fair game necessarily, but she is.
Well, she is in the administration,
yes.
but there is, my position. There needs to be a certain level of respect for the office, right? And those in the office, right? Now, listen, if you're just a bumbling idiot, which we've seen out of some of these congressmen and senators, then it is what it is. You call them a bumbling idiot. But I don't call them, dickbag, fucktard, cum buckets, right? Or whatever. Like, I mean, you just, like, there's got to be, like, there's got to be a certain level of decorum that you have. I don't give a shit that you're a comic. That's what we do. We push the boundaries. You didn't push the boundaries. You were just an asshole, right? Like, I'm not giving you credit for that. It wasn't funny. It was tasteless. And there's a penalty that you have to pay for that amongst people who don't accept that as acceptable behavior in a civilized fucking society. So,
but if it was some great, all right, let's spin it to Michelle Wolf, who did her thing at the press correspondence dinner. I thought she was hilarious at that.
She wasn't.
Okay,
She didn't make me laugh. It wasn't funny. Like, and my thing is that her whole thing was recycled jokes and takes that we've been hearing for the last 2 years.
Oh, come on. The Joe Scarborough and Mika thing is like a Me Too that went right. I thought that was funny.
Okay.
All right. I guess you didn't.
Right. I mean, all right. But I mean, all that shit, like, especially none of that shit, like.
That's when a Me Too works out. Sorry.
Okay. It's fine, I guess. But to me, that's like I need it to be funny. Like, you're like, all that is just taking digs at people, intentionally trying to cut people down, intentionally, going after low-hanging fruit and then expecting applause and praise for it, which to me, that's not comedy. Right, like, I mean, comedy.
That's roast comedy, which is a different kind of thing.
But even and I agree. I agree that there's an art to roast comedy. You go back and you look at the roast that they did of Dean Martin and Frank Sinatra and Sammy Davis Jr.
Don Rickles was he was the
roaster,
man, yeah.
Right? And he was vulgar, but there was an intelligence and there was a specificity to the way that he did it, that it's still funny today when you go back and you watch those things, knowing what we know about those men, what we knew about them then, and what we know about them now. And I think now people don't do that. I didn't feel that in that. I didn't feel that with her. I didn't feel like, to me, it didn't pass muster.
Anthony.
I think that you liked it because she.
Well, I think she's fun. I like Michelle Wolf. I think she's funny. I like her delivery. I thought the thing she did to Sarah Huckabee Sanders with,
That was the only funny thing. Okay. That was the only funny thing where she's talking about the smoky eyeshadow and then with the ashes and everything else.
Maybe it's Maybelline, maybe it's lies.
Right. That small window I actually did think was funny, and then people jumped on it and just like, oh, you're making fun of women and attack. Like, get the fuck out of here. She actually gave her a compliment, but then also, I mean, she, Sarah Huckabee Sanders is like, she's like the commander-in-chief of defending lies.
Yes. I also thought the CNN joke was, you keep bringing up breaking news. Well, you broke it. You broke it. All right. Anyway, we could go on about this, but we've gone a bit long. So good talking to you, brother.
Yes, sir.
Anything else? All right. We are at Whiskey Congress on social media. Steve or Jim at Whiskey Congress for email. Please email it if you have a come at me, bro. You want one of us to pose to the other. Email appropriately, and we'll see what we can do. Thanks for listening.